The next item on the agenda, nomination papers. Shannon M. Donahue, Senate District 7. Good evening. Should you identify yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Shannon Donahue.
Frank Catanzaro.
She's with my campaign.
Okay.
I'm with Shannon. So,
And here, you are, sir?
Frank Catanzaro, Senator for District 7.
Okay. Do we have, all we have is the objection at this point, right? The challenge registered voters on the nomination papers. Rejected voters.
There were 98 approved, is that correct?
98 approved.
100 were required, 98 were approved by the Providence canvassers.
Okay.
We should mark those signature, those nomination papers, as well as the objection.
The challenge. Yeah.
So we could start with the objection or the challenge by Shannon Donahue as Exhibit A. I have a set of documents which have a list of rejected signatures. Is that part of the challenge, or is that something directly from the Secretary's office?
that's part of the challenge. We would only like to address 4 of the voters at this time.
So the challenge papers include the list, including form that references Form 1 through Form 6, as well as the affidavits that are attached. That is all part of your challenge, so that would all be part of Exhibit A. Exhibit B should be the set of nomination papers themselves, and then Exhibit C should be the objection or the motion from Senator Chacon. That would be Exhibit C. Are there any other documents that either party wishes to introduce? That's all I received from the board.
No.
Yes, please. We do have other documents we'd like to submit.
Have you shown them to the opposing party, Senator Chacon?
No, we were not aware that there was an opposing party at the time.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
No, we were not aware of an opposing party when we filed the objection, and were never notified of such.
Can we at least have the documents marked for identification, and then there may be a need to actually take a recess. I'm not sure how extensive they are.
There are 2 documents, one being a record of voter registration. It's a screenshot from the Secretary of State's website. The second one is an additional affidavit from another voter whose signature was rejected. There's also video evidence if needed. I wasn't sure how to submit that. I tried to figure out the best way, but we do have a thumb drive and a laptop if that's necessary, and we're willing to submit the thumb drive that has all of the documents as well.
So the exhibits that you do have in your possession, could you please show those to the opposing party so that we can see if there's any opposition to them being introduced as exhibits?
I would just like to question what page or what sheet this name appears on.
Veronica?
Yes.
Veronica appears on Form 5, line 3 on the front.
I would object to it by looking at the signature that's on this sheet of paper and the signatures on this affidavit.
I believe that's the signature that was disqualified by the Board of Campuses.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, based on what was considered the registration.
But at this point, we're just looking to see if you object to that being part of the record.
I objected being part of the record, and I also objected it's not part of the appeal that was originally filed.
Okay?
Could you please explain that? The appeal was for signatures that were not validated by the board.
It was very broad. You challenged the rejected voters, right? On your nomination paper.
Correct.
Okay. Should we hear from,
The other, so we have several documents with respect to the challenge, the signatures, the motion, those should all be marked as full because they've been submitted by the parties. With respect to the snapshot, is there any opposition to that being introduced? Is that part
I
of the
believe
same?
the board, listen, yes, I object based on the fact that I've been hearing the board object that it's hearsay at this point.
mark it for identification.
identification? Okay.
So do we have, can you then present your position with respect to the basis for your challenges? Are you an attorney? Probably not, right?
Okay.
But she can, if she's here with the candidate,
Right.
I think it's okay for her to talk.
She's going to just do
I mean,
it.
she's not, I see her more as a witness
Okay.
than as a...
You certainly you have the right to present testimony, so in that regard, we'll swear you in.
Could you stand, please? Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Be seated.
Say your name for the record, please.
Frank Catanzaro. Thank you. We are contesting 4 signatures that were rejected. Three of which have been submitted prior to this evening. One of which we have documents that we just submitted or we were attempting to submit. So the first being
Is the fourth signature the affidavit?
yes, the
Yes.
fourth signature is an affidavit. All 4 affidavits were signed and recorded, video recording of the voter signing them. The affidavits affirm that that voter is in fact a registered voter of the district. Also, that they did in fact sign Shannon's nomination papers. It was then, the affidavits were then notarized by myself. I'm a notary. And we have video evidence of this, all 4 affidavits being signed and notarized. We also have a screenshot of a voter registration online of Veronica. Her signature specifically was rejected on the basis of her not being registered to vote, and that's the reason why we also included that that screenshot. The other 3, 2 of them being their signatures were rejected on the basis of not matching, and we did speak with those voters and get affidavits for them. And the last being that Lillian Area, her registration was considered to be pending, and I've been trying to figure out whether or not her registration has gone through or not. So we also got an affidavit from her.
Any
Can I ask a
questions?
question? When you say you have video documentation, are you saying that you have documentation of their original signature or of a video affidavit where they're saying, this is me and I signed the papers?
The video we have is for the affidavit signature and notarization, not the original ones for the nomination papers.
How many affidavits do you have?
4.
Okay.
And again, there are 98 accurate signatures that have been confirmed, so we're looking to challenge 4 of the 69 total that were rejected.
I have a question about registration being pending. What does that mean?
Yes, I'd like to know that myself.
I did question that at the board of the Secretary of State's office. The nomination papers, that specific one, it was Form 2, line 6. It was written P-E-N-D. I questioned what that meant, and they explained that that was a pending registration at the Secretary of State's office.
So they just registered, I see.
Alternatively, it also could have been a name or address change, or party change.
And I also have another witness here, Mr. Gaspar Espinoza, who was with me collecting signatures, and he can testify to at least 2 of the signatures that we both got.
Question, can you testify to the signatures yourself?
Absolutely.
I mean, at this point, the affidavits would be difficult to introduce. They would be presented to establish the truthfulness of a statement that is not before you. The opposing party would have no opportunity to challenge the veracity or in any other way to do it. Obviously, there's the best evidence rule if you thought that was the only way you could get the evidence, and you could consider that. But in this case, the other evidence could be developed by you comparing the signatures yourself.
Or by the individual who acquired the signatures testifying that they were.
Of course. If you have someone who witnessed the signature being obtained and is testifying to that effect, and Mr. Chacon has a right to cross-examine that person, yes.
Would you agree to be sworn in and to make that statement on the record?
Absolutely.
Would you please stand? Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Your name for the record, please?
Shannon M. Donahue.
Okay. So we should ask then if you indeed saw the, should we proceed that way or how?
You have indicated that there were 2 signatures that were rejected by the Board of Canvassers that you acquired yourself. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And could you identify for the board the names of those 2 individuals?
And their location on those forms, please.
Veronica A. Otogio Exioglu, Form 5, line 3, front. That's the one that was considered not, or they said wasn't registered, and I know she was because I walked to the polls with her and voted with her. So, Marianna Sousa is Form 6, line 6 in the back, and that was a signature. Lucas A. Sano, Form 4, line 4, front, that was a signature. And Lillian Area, Form 2, line 6, front, and that was the one that was pending.
And in each of those cases, you were the one that solicited the signature?
Absolutely.
And saw that individual sign in your presence?
Yes.
I have a question about the not registered though. I mean, that would be something that we would need verification from you. And also the pending signature is also
But we need 2 signatures, right?
correct.
The first one that you gave me was Veronica, page 5.
Page 5,
Number
line
3,
3,
front.
front. Yes, she's my next door neighbor.
So she is personally known to you?
Absolutely.
By the city of Providence, has not registered. With another last name.
At the same address?
So the executive director is giving us a piece of paper that shows that this individual is in fact registered, but registered under a different name, 2 names.
Okay, so we should have that marked as an exhibit.
So that would be exhibit.
That would be, I believe that would be exhibit F.
Okay.
And this is a record from the CVRS.
That is correct. And I believe that Ms. Donahue also has the document. Would you want that?
The other
Well-
document.
This is the document that Mr. Chacon has objected to.
Okay, but first, with respect to this one, this is generated by the CVRS, so this can be marked as full. You attest that it's a full and accurate copy of what was on the CVRS?
Thank you.
F. And that's for which person?
Her name is
Beginning with Veronica? Has Senator Chacon seen that document?
I have a copy of it, and I also saw the affidavit, and that's where I say the signatures did not match.
Yes.
And we need to see that over here. Yeah, it's- Oh, we didn't. Oh, no, it's-
Do you have a name? Do you have a name?
No, could we have that?
For the same individual?
So there's no signature.
So the local board threw that signature out because the person wasn't registered with that
Things that wasn't registered under that name.
name.
Under that name.
But she's registered under VA Otogio? That's EJ. Right, right,
She had two.
right. All right, change this, right. So,
Ms. Donahue knows her.
right.
Once we get the signature on this one.
Madam Chair, I would move that
Through the
based
chair.
upon,
Yes.
Just a question. What happens with the pending name? Signatures have to be verified within a certain number of days. One is pending. How long does it take for that name to become a valid signature, or they say it's the valid signature? What happened after the fact, after the cutoff date and the certification date, then they say that this name is a valid name? How do they recognize, well, do they say that now she's a candidate because she has the required number of signatures?
I guess
Can
that's,
someone
You
explain
could only
to me
make
how
a
that
determination
process
based upon the status of the person who signed the papers at the time that the nomination papers are being considered for validation. That's the only time you can, that's the status, that's your snapshot with respect to those signatures.
And it's 30 days, right? After you
Actually, so if she's done it, if
register.
she doesn't make it with that signature, then she's disqualified.
But we only need 2 additional signatures.
And that was the 4th one you raised, though. You had 2 others in between those that you're saying were valid signatures.
could I ask Mr. Rock a question, if you don't mind? Sorry to put you on the spot. Identify yourself for the record.
Sure, Rob Rock, Director of Elections for Secretary of State, Nellie Gouveia office.
So when a registration is labeled as pending, or I'm sorry, yeah, voter registration, that means that they are not yet eligible to vote because the 30 days is not passed, is that correct?
That's correct.
It does not go to the heart of whether or not it's a valid registration. It only goes to the question of whether or not the person is registered within 30 days of the current date.
That's correct.
So as soon as you go past the 30 days, it automatically moves from pending
Active.
to active. Okay.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
This
What if
scheme
you
is-
did? But we don't, so we don't.
You would ask about the first.
Well, I was actually going to make a motion that based upon the testimony of the witness concerning this individual being their next door neighbor and the similarity in the names, where one of the last names was left off, but there's been direct testimony that this was an individual known to the individual who collected the signature, and that person was in fact a valid voter. I would move that that signature be admitted as an additional signature for her nomination papers.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the name of Veronica, last name, be admitted as a signature.
Madam Chairman, before we vote on it,
Yes.
we should set up to have an opportunity to examine the witness providing that signature.
I agree.
That's a very good point, thank you.
My question will be this here. You say this is your neighbor, correct?
Yes,
And when you collected the signature, you said you voted with her before, previously, correct?
yes,
So the name that she signed and the name that she printed was not the name on her voter registration form?
she left her husband Andy's last name off the form, correct.
So she didn't know her name at the time? to
No,
the
she
original-
knew her name, that's, Veronica, she says it's too long. So she says too long, and if there wasn't enough room, she just wrote her own last name, her maiden name, and didn't include her husband's name.
No. I'll renew my motion.
We also have a witness to that signature because,
I think your testimony is adequate.
I seconded it.
Moved and seconded to approve that name. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That's 99.
99.
For the record, I just would like to object to the vote that was taken.
So noted.
Thank you.
There are two others that you have raised at this point?
Correct.
Do we have those, Bob?
If you could tell me those again.
Marianna Sousa, Form 6, Line 6, back, and that was the signature. Lucas A. Sano,
Let me do 6 first.
okay.
Will this be a separate exhibit, Bob? Is this, this has not been introduced yet? So this will be Exhibit G. And can you just describe it?
It's a nomination paper, Form 6. The voter in question is on the back, line 6, Marianna Sousa, and it is for signature.
Could I just ask, is this one that was also witnessed by you?
Absolutely.
Do we have a signature on Marianna?
Is someone known by you before?
She was not known to me before. However, we do have a signed affidavit, a notarized affidavit by this same person, which was submitted.
Which one is it? And that was rejected for signature.
Correct.
I'm getting the card.
I think Mr. Raposa is getting that, I think he's getting that right now. I'm not sure.
January 4th.
Number 6.
I don't think we can discuss it.
It doesn't happen again.
I have competition fast because I have those. But by the way, did I mention that it's very
Fasting. Yeah. Trained a little prematurely. I was superintendent. This is so mine. Just 9. So. Oh, yeah.
Well, wait for rank.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Reposo?
What we have found is that there has not been a signature scanned into the CVRS, so that the Board of Canvassers in Providence must have actually looked at the hard copy, which we do not have access to at this moment.
So we don't have the hard copy. We don't have a copy of the actual signature on record.
That is correct.
We have the signature that's on the paper and testimony by the individual who collected the signature.
That is correct.
And there is video.
Correct.
On all other times we looked at this, we had an opportunity to take a look at the hard copy of the signature. I don't think we can pass on the signature.
Well, we have the sworn testimony. Person gathered the signature.
But we don't have a hard copy of the signature.
You also have an affidavit signed in front of me and the notary public.
It's hearsay.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Opposing parties doesn't have an opportunity to examine the field.
Oh, take it.
So it's
No,
unfair to introduce that.
But there's opportunity to examine the individual who testified that she received, that she collected the signature.
So we should have the opportunity to take a look at the original signature. It's always been our position.
True, but how do we respond to the fact that Providence hasn't scanned it in? Does that handicap us? Why don't they have that?
I could not answer that for you.
I would ask you to speculate then.
I won't speculate.
And I point out the witness, the person who signed it is not in attendance. We can't examine that person.
And the other signature that you raised, also
Lucas A. Sano.
also Providence, so it's correct, there's a possibility that that signature also wouldn't be,
But we can try. Which form and which line?
Form 4, line 4, front.
if we have that.
The last name was
Sano, S-A-N-O.
And this one, the name is America de los Santos.
Oh, wait a minute.
It was on line 4, I believe.
Line 4 is Lucas Sano.
Yes.
Bob, before you leave, is that a separate page, a nomination paper.
It is a nomination paper on page 4.
So we should mark that as, I think we're at Exhibit G. Okay.
I'm going to see it on the system.
This one should be in the system because he's a longtime voter.
Page 4, number 4.
For that individual, Bob?
For that.
So we should mark that as Exhibit H and provide a copy to the parties, or at least let them see the paper.
His signature is how many years old? 14 years old. Right?
Is this a signature that you acquired personally?
Yes, it is.
Do you know this individual?
We've met several times.
What line is that?
This is his signature. This is they don't match it. Oh. Yeah, but it's
May I make another comment? Mr. Sano was here to be a witness, but he had to leave. He had another commitment, so he should be signed in.
You should be signed in.
That's a really good suggestion, thank you.
Madam Chair, without seeing the document you're seeing, without seeing the sign-in sheet,
No, I would agree. I think that before any vote or any signature, we should certainly give the
Absolutely,
challenger
you better
a right
check.
to see that.
Yes, yes.
Here it is, the voter registration form that we have on file, and then this is where he signed it. This is his voter registration form that is
I would object to the sign in here. It appears that the way he's put his name here and the way that he printed his name here are two different ways. And in addition to that, who signed it? Do we know?
So are you, just so I understand the objection, because it seems to be twofold. One, as to authenticity, and then to the signature, and then two, you seem to be using it as a basis of comparison. Are you?
I try to compare the signature or the printing of this to the printing of the...
That would require that we admit it into evidence. So first, do you object to its admission into evidence?
I would object, and also the signature on that voter registration form does not match the signature on this.
Which is secondary, because you're saying that that's not admissible. It is up to the board, but typically the board limits itself to the records from the canvassing authority, the signature documents. So in my view, that would be the better approach, that you would consider that signature, because that is the basis for a typical challenge.
I agree with you, because the sign-in sheet is, has documented.
It hasn't been authenticated in any fashion.
It's on
Correct. So I think, so my recommendation would be that Exhibit I, which we should mark for identification of the signature sheet. One, should just be marked for identification, and two, that while the board has reviewed it, the basis for your decision should not rely upon that document.
So if I understand you correctly, the evidence that we have in front of us that's admissible evidence, this is falsified, is, first of all, the signature card, copy of the signature card.
From the CVRS? Yes, Exhibit H.
The actual signature on the nomination papers.
Exhibit G.
And the testimony of the witness that this person signed in her presence and is known to her.
So far, although the challenger has not had an opportunity to cross-examine
that.
I would like to add as well, in the original documents that were filed to the Secretary of State in the challenge, one of the original documents is the signed affidavit from Lucas, and that was accessible and originally filed with our original complaint. So I would say that that should also be included as
my recommendation is that we would not allow any affidavit to be introduced where the challenger has not had the opportunity to cross-examine the affiant. That would not be appropriate.
I was the notary on that. Would I be able to?
Madam Chair.
Well, no, I understand I understand why you're saying that, but no, the testimony is from that person. That person should either be here, or there should be some other way of allowing the challenger to examine that person so we can test the credibility. So, no, not as a notary.
Madam Chair, maybe I can clarify this. If you were to look at line 4 and 5, the reason I bring this objection, these individuals were former relations of my opponents in the last 2 elections, and it appears that the signing is somewhat different, although they don't match the card that I just saw. But the printing of the name and the way the streets are, if you look at the L, you look at the A, and you look at the S's, they're the same. So, absent them being here on the road, I would object.
There's not the signature we were looking at, though, right?
Well, right now we're focused on the signature of Mr. Sano. Is that one of the signatures?
That's one of the signatures.
Then I think the board should, we don't have that, you don't have copies, do you? So I think that you would need to show that to the board again. What lines are you referring to again?
It was line 5 and line 4.
We also have to give them an opportunity to cross-examine the witness on her statement. So that might be appropriate now. Do you have any questions for her relative to the testimony she gave?
No, I have none except that obviously it appears that one person signed 2 names.
I would also like to add that the written street name and number, as well as the written and printed name, is not required to be written by the signer or the voter. This has been clarified many times at the Board of Canvassers in many cities, including Providence. The signatures themselves are the ones that must be done by the voter. The name and the address, however, printed is not required, just as an added. I think that the words, the names in question were printed, correct? And then the street address was the printed address, correct? Not the signatures themselves.
That is correct, but if you look at the signatures, the beginning of the L's on 4 and 5, and then the rest of the name was somewhat scribbled, look similar in handwriting.
We do have video evidence that we would like to admit, if you would be willing to admit that, of Lucas, as well as all 4 of the voters who signed the affidavits. We do have video evidence of them signing the affidavits in person, if that's something that you'd be willing to admit.
Right. Yeah, there are certain protections that are afforded to you as well as the challenger. One of the most important is that he have an opportunity to examine that person, that person be put under oath and be present here. Without those kind of opportunities being afforded, typically they are not allowed. There are some exceptions, but none that you've articulated, in my opinion.
What if the individuals in question were not available to be here, or they did try to be here but they had a work obligation? In that case, the best evidence that we can provide would be the video evidence. Is that anything that
cannot be tested? I mean, that's an assertion. That assertion cannot be tested for veracity. So we're left with a record that you can present that can be challenged.
So what we have now is we have the signature, or the signature card. We have the testimony of the witness who said that she solicited and obtained the signature from an individual known to her. And we have an objection to that testimony. That's where we're at now.
Madam Chair,
And we have, yes,
I believe Judge Erickson, there was an error in one thing you said. She said, didn't say she knew the person, she said she met the person.
Several times. Actually, I'm friendly with members of the family, and we have met several times, but I wouldn't say that he and I are particular friends. More like acquaintance.
Do you have any other questions?
No, I do not.
Does the board have any questions? Any of these witnesses or our attorney?
The Santos.
We are just dealing with the Santos. Yes. It's the pleasure of the board.
Do we have the, excuse me, do we have the signature?
We do not have the signature card on the Sano. Oh, the Sano signature card?
Yeah, we have that.
Yeah, that's exhibit H.
That's the one that doesn't match.
That is correct.
Yeah, my opinion.
I agree. I don't think the signature is very close. But I also know that signatures change over time. And the fact is that we have testimony by a person who acquired the signature. And we're not experts on signature matching. We pretend we are every 2 years, but we're not. You know, we have to we have to make decisions, and we almost always make those decisions outside of the context of anybody actually telling us what happened with respect to that particular signature. So the question here is, do we put our ability to compare signatures ahead of a sworn statement by the person who collected it, or do we put the sworn statement ahead of the signature comparison? And given the fact that signatures do vary over time, based on my personal experience with my own over time, but I think that the sworn testimony is what persuades me that we should consider accepting the signature.
Is that a motion?
I would move that.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion?
Moved and seconded, do we have discussion?
I find that signatures don't vary that much. I mean, there's a tremendous variance between the signature card and what's on the nomination papers. For that reason, I would reject this thing.
Any other discussion? So it's moved and seconded to accept the decision, the signature, rather. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? I'm in favor as well. The ayes have it. So at this point,
I would move that the board decision determining her to be ineligible be overturned and that she be certified as a qualified candidate.
we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Excuse me, there's an outstanding objection. There's still item C.
We didn't consider item C. Right. That was an objection to that, but it wasn't admitted as full.
Item C was the one that didn't have the signature card.
No, that was Senator Jacoby's objection
Oh.
on legal matters.
Okay.
We've got a motion.
Well, what do we have? What could we just, as part of the discussion on that motion, what is it that's being referred to?
The motion is on the grounds of timeliness, that if I understand it correctly, that the objection submitted by Ms. Donahue was not timely filed with the office of the secretary.
Okay. Do we have that?
Yes, I believe you have it. I have a copy.
Is it timestamped?
Everything appears to be timestamped.
Is that the one? Is that this document that I'm showing?
That's
another
the,
document.
That's another document.
the motion is the motion to vacate objection to eligibility of the candidate. And we should get a copy.
Right, I have it. Have it marked as Exhibit C. You got a copy?
I don't think we have a copy of it.
I'm going to make you copies.
I don't have a copy of that either.
This Exhibit C. as I read this, I'm not sure, the Board of Canvassers had until when to validate signatures?
This would have been done at the 17th or 16th?
20th?
What's the question?
The last day to affirm the signatures, that would have been the 17th or 16th?
Okay.
The 20th.
20th.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I believe most of you are, some of you are attorneys, some of you swore an oath to uphold the laws of the state of Rhode Island. If you look at the nomination papers, there is a specific date on there. And that date states that the final date for filing a nomination papers is July 16, 2018. Under Rhode Island General Law 1714-13, it's very clear. It says that the nomination papers have been duly filed and are in apparent conformity with 1714-11. They shall be conclusively presumed to be valid unless written objections to them are made as to the eligibility of the candidate or sufficiency of the nomination papers or the signatures on them. All objections shall be filed in the office of the Secretary of State or the local board, as the case may be, by 4 o'clock on the next business day after the last day fixed for filing of nominations, which was July 16. Now, I've heard that maybe your policy is to allow the certifications to take whenever. I don't think a policy can change the law that was enacted.
The law requires the objections to be filed by you're saying by the 17th.
It says by the day following.
But these wouldn't, you're saying that you expect Ms. Donahue to be filing objections against her own nomination papers?
I'm saying that
These are objections by whom?
the objections by Ms. Donahue against the board.
Against her own,
Yeah.
well, against the board. When did the board make a decision?
I don't know, at the beginning, I saw on the website, the board had like 49 signatures for, or 39 signatures. As a matter of fact, as far as the hearing tonight, Mr. Rock, when I went to drop off my objection yesterday, I wasn't notified of a hearing until he told me. At about 4:15, correct. So, I mean, this is a question of law. Is the law correct, or is some policy correct? And even in the voter manual, it says the final day is the 16th. It mentions nothing about certifications in the
But
Rhode
isn't
Island
Ms.
law.
Donahue challenging the rejected signatures by the authority? And that all occurred after was that done yesterday?
Obviously, there's a flaw in the law that should have been corrected. And this isn't the first time that this came up before the board. So, had there been a problem, what should have taken place is somebody from the board or somebody from the Secretary of State's office filed new law stating that in addition to the filing of the nomination papers, which is codified in 1714-13, that there should have been additionally a clause that added for a certification. Absent that in the law, I firmly believe that no court would uphold the 20th as the final day.
Madam Chair?
Well, just before we go to that, do we have a record as to when exactly all of these papers were certified? What's the date that the nomination period, was it, I know that they were filed with the Secretary yesterday on the 23rd. Is that right?
Well, appeals were to be filed by 4 p.m. on yesterday for state races.
So pursuant to what statute?
Well, what we're talking about, I think what the challenger is saying, if I understand correctly, they're saying that objections to the nomination papers needed to be filed by the 17th.
But this is not objection to the nomination papers, this is an objection
review,
to the
precisely.
decision of the
Correct.
Board of Canvassers, which is a different matter.
So we should at least know what the date was that the board actually, do we know the date that the board actually certified these signatures?
Friday. The 23rd.
17, 14, 12.
I'm sorry.
17, 14, 12 is the law. It's 54 days before the
Brian,
primary.
I'm talking, I can't even hear you,
All right.
all over the place.
Well, then why don't we stop for a second?
Madam Chair?
Hold on, just for a second, and now these not
Let's
for needs to get
clarify what we're
clarified.
talking about.
I just want to get the date that the nomination papers were certified. Do we have that from the board staff first? If not, we can go over to the secretary's office.
I have these non-papers were certified by the Providence Board on July 18th.
And Mr. Rock, were you about to say something? Could you identify yourself and then state on the record what you wish to say?
And get close to the microphone.
Rob Rock, Secretary of State's office. The question was asked when the deadline to file the nomination papers with our office by the cities and towns, and that's the 54th day before the primary, which would have been Friday, July 20th.
July 20.
That's the deadline, according to 17, 14, 12.
And then there's 48 hours.
With an intervening,
I believe it 48 hours for,
Well, it's 48 hours to hear the appeal after the appeal has been filed here, as we heard within 48 hours, correct?
I believe that's correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So, I'm very confused. I filed nomination papers. I'm running for state rep, okay? And I file 60 signatures. And the local board disqualifies 11 of them. So now I have 49. The certification by the local board is made by last Friday, correct?
That's correct.
To the Secretary of State.
That's correct.
I can't appeal that determination until after it's been certified to the Secretary of State. So I don't have anything to appeal, because there's no document, there's no certification. And that's one example. The other example is somebody challenges my nomination papers. The first example is my nomination papers are rejected by the local board because their independent analysis says that there aren't enough signatures. That's case one. Case two is I file my nomination papers and somebody objects to my nomination papers. And that's the objection that has to be filed in 17-14-13 by 4 p.m. on the next business day after the last day fixed for filing nomination papers in the appropriate office. So somebody objects to my nomination papers, they have to do it within the provisions of 17-14-13. And then there would be a hearing here based upon that objection if the board found that my papers weren't valid.
right, I think, and to
And
clarify
two
that
different
further,
cases, yeah.
to clarify that further, this is not a set of objections to the nomination papers. This is a challenge or an appeal from the decision that rejected certain signatures, which is very different.
Exactly.
I mean, they involve the same set of papers, but at a different level. So with the first, I understand the argument, but with the second, where you're saying that my nomination papers were properly submitted and I'm challenging the decision that rejected 5, 10, 15, that's very different. That, in my opinion, that is not subject to the same July 17 deadline that the challenger claims to be the dispositive date.
If this argument was accepted, a lot of the ones that were just done wouldn't have been done.
Exactly.
So it would completely change how we've been doing things.
Just
you make the motion?
I originally made a motion to determine that this candidate is eligible.
And I said,
We'll have a discussion.
But I think you should make a motion with respect to this particular motion, which is Exhibit C. Do you affirm or reject?
I would amend my motion to deny the motion to vacate what was filed by the senator. So my motion is to deny his objection to the appeal and to...
That might be one motion in
That should be
itself.
one motion,
Right.
okay. So that's my motion,
So
to
you just
deny.
clarified your
Yeah,
motion.
Right.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? So a motion's been made to deny the motion to vacate objection to the eligibility of the candidate. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
now the other motion.
And now the motion is to determine that Ms. Donahue is a qualified candidate for Senate District 7 based upon the board's determination that there were 100 eligible signatures on her nomination papers.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve the nomination papers of Shannon Donahue. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
In my opinion, there are only 99. Question, Mr. Sano's signature. So I'm going to be voting in the negative on this motion.
So noted. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed?
One opposed. The ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you.